Hey guys, welcome back to the podcast. Today, I'm joined with Sunny. Bro, introduce yourself.
Sunny, aka my government name Sandeep, landed here. A cousin of Tarun's,
hmm
and I'm grateful to be here. Um, really like what he's doing in the space, and I'm here to kind of support the movement, the development of this channel, and I really hope we can have a good conversation today. Whatever we want to cover, it feels like it's going to be a nice, fluid chat. I look forward to it.
Of course, bro. I think it's a different one because, like we kind of briefly touched on off camera, it's a lot of artists and videographers coming in here, but you're in a kind of different space, different lane, and I think that we just wanted to get you in and talk about your journey, how you got to this point and where you started. So I think let's probably start there. Where did it all start for you? When did you kind of get this hunger to end up where you are now?
I think, as probably relatable to a lot of people, young people especially, it's kind of realizing what you're kind of good at or what you think you can actually monetize in a sense. For me, that was education. So it's very different to a creative outlet, as I guess it would be familiar to yourself and people that you've probably had on before. But for me, it was when I was younger and I realized, all right, so Asian family will not really support and back the whole sports, even though I really love playing sports. So for me, I think during A levels, when I moved school within Coventry, that was, just found my groove there. The teachers actually believed in me for once. I realized I could actually pick up and retain information. Had a great interest in psychology due to childhood and parental upbringing, which we can kind of get into more a little bit later. And I was able to just figure out that if this is what it takes to be successful in this field, this is actually quite safe. And that's kind of what at least was the initial thought process I had. And then before you know it, the snowball effect takes place. You do well in one exam, it gives you momentum to do good in another. Options open up. You're highlighted for certain things. People kind of encourage you. It's good for them, the teachers, and it's good for me. And then before you know it, you're looking towards university and stuff. And then I thought, hey, great opportunity to kind of see where this goes now. Because realistically, there wasn't really another option for myself. Especially, as you know, upbringing and background wise, it was just up to me. It was kind of, I took the burden of that stress really young. And I guess I just realized as the oldest sibling in the house, I wanted to make a change. And I really wanted to deliver on that. And, I'm grateful to say that I think I do.
100%. I think, just so the viewers kind of know where you're at now, let's talk about your life after university. Where did you kind of end up after university?
Yeah, and I think I should actually, just before that, I'll just touch on A levels a little bit there as well, just so you can actually fully grasp it. So A levels were new to me. I didn't realize how hard you had to work for A levels. So I did 5 A levels. I was pushed in this school.
Wow.
And there were like economics, IT, psychology, accounting, and then it was another one. It was like an extended project, so it was like a 15,000 word essay, I guess. And based on how good you get, depends on where you go for a university, right? So I'd already got into a gifted and talented overnight stay at Aston University, which is really where I ended up. So they were doing this kind of mechanics course, and we were in like year 9 or 10. So they kind of saw, out of a deprived school, these are the kind of kids that would probably get 5 A-star to C in maths and English. And that's a key attribute to, facilitating the next level of your steps. So university comes around, fortunately did really good in university, but I should also say that I actually got a scholarship to go to university because I exceeded the requirements for Aston University, but it was from the heart. So I went to Aston out of University of Leicester and University of Nottingham. I actually rejected both of those universities, which are actually top tier red brick universities. I studied economics and management at Aston University. Amazing time. I did a 1-year placement that really helped. I did that at Rolls-Royce Motor Cars and BMW. I even lived in Germany when I was at 19 on my own. Funded the whole month on my own, worked in their hedge fund foreign exchange department. And then I come back to university, finished it up, applied to one job in final year, KPMG, and that's where I ended up in Canary Wharf. So that's literally going from not really realizing that education could unlock certain doors for me, but it actually gave me confidence. I don't think I had that before. Education actually gave me the confidence, which is actually contrary to what a lot of people think. They think it's long, they think it might not, but for me, it really worked. So I'm here to kind of say, you've got to work with what you have, and you've got to take the opportunity and the opportunities which kind of present themselves as a result. So I think your question was what happened after university, right? So bear in mind, I'm kind of young. I don't really know the corporate world. So I've kind of picked up my bags after the last summer holiday I'd ever thought I'd enjoy. Straight to Canary Wharf. I lived in Bermondsey, and I felt so lonely in this place, like London being a place where people are already well connected, and there's me just like living by myself in a big four. I have no idea what's to come. I don't even know. I had like imposter syndrome. Like, how have I ended up here when typically these are where people end up from big four big red brick universities. How did I end up in the big four was my question in my head. And I think being around them, you realize they're just normal. They're just also human. They've also just got a brain. They've probably been coached and nurtured a lot more, but essentially the output is equivalent, and that's what they look for. So yeah, you kind of learn that, you develop that confidence, and you learn how to navigate those environments more and more so.
So how did you kind of deal with that pressure early on? Because obviously you grew up in Cov and going to London at such a young age, working for, one of the big four. There must have been a lot of anxiety and pressure and stress that came with that. So how did you deal with that at such a young age?
I think, funnily enough, one of the, something that wouldn't make sense to a lot of people is like the ego side. The ego actually allows you to thrive in certain environments. If you know you're able to do something, it could be confidence/ego. That's the thing that will allow you to be a bit ballsy, a bit cheeky. So I was always a little bit of a, able to talk my way into situations and out of situations for the benefit of, academic studies or, reasoning in essays, for example. And I just realized, like, I am here and I have some attributes that they're looking for. So that gives you at least a glimpse into what confidence should feel like. And I think with all the pressure going on, I'm like asking them, where did you study? They're like Cambridge, UCL, Oxford, King's College. And I was thinking, damn, man, like, I just feel like I'm a little boy from Coventry. I went to Birmingham University, which isn't too far from home. Had a very cultural experience when growing up. And now here I am in the thick of the city, the big smoke. And pressure, I don't think the pressure actually goes. You just kind of adapt to it. So now I'm able to say 9 years on, 9 years on after graduation, I'm able to say, keep at it. But at the time, there's lots of ups and downs, and there's certain coping mechanisms that you have to develop, and working out was a big one for me, as you remember from back in the day. Be around yourself and, getting some advice from your dad sometimes as well really helped, and it wouldn't be specific advice. It would be general advice, like how you could navigate this area and why you should be confident and kind of proud of yourself. And I think that's the thing you were missing when you come from in a neighborhood where it's not like that. It's about actually having the self-esteem and building self-esteem. So self-esteem, I think, goes hand in hand with like quiet confidence, and that will allow you to thrive in these areas more so.
You said then as well, you kind of, so I remember this vividly, you were like you still are massively on top of your fitness and health. How did that play a part in shaping your mindset and your motivation to kind of hit your goals?
As many people have already said, people that have gone to fitness extremes way beyond me, it's almost like it's a good stress management tool. So anytime, let's say an essay was difficult, you're coming down with stress from a family environment or, a relationship scenario, it was about you having an outlet. Some people write poetry, some people would write blogs. I just chose to go to the gym. I felt like I had an abundance of energy to burn. And that's basically cortisol and stress in my system. I come to realize actually this is more prevalent than I actually thought. Stress can eat at you if you don't do anything about it, which means that it actually paid to actually calm you down. Your central nervous system needed to come down a few notches. And if you're always stressed out, you're not at the best of your abilities. You won't think clearly. you won't act accordingly, and you won't take that step back. So I started off with probably, running and working out, muscle groups. And I just realized that it's kind of another confidence builder in a way, but at the same time, you're burning off all that energy. And then guess what happens when you want to work out? You're probably going to start to eat better foods and probably sleep better. Or actually, your body will force you to do those things, because you have to do those things in order to maintain a level of fitness, to continue a level of fitness and progress. Because if you're working out and not sleeping, you're going to probably have a week, you're not going to have as many gains as you would like. So I think I learned very young from watching certain TV shows or reading certain, like Men's Health is what I used to read when we were doing our weekly shop. I'd realize actually it's actually good for the body, it's good for the mind, and it develops a hardened mindset, which is to say, yes, okay, I'm dealing with this stress, and I'm also actively managing it, which is working out, which is going for a run, which is going for a walk, clearing your mind, maybe meditating as well. That's actually what I did in the later stages, when I realized it's not all about, just push through it. It's also about recollection. It's all about sitting still and just like absorbing whatever's gone on for the day or the weeks or the months that you haven't fully taken accountability for.
It is important, isn't it, just to stay on top of that side of things, 'cause it does go hand in hand with your career and being on top of that, right? It's so important. But one thing, that we haven't really touched on that I wanted to is life before kind of uni or school, your upbringing essentially, and where you came from. Could you talk to us a little bit about that and what kind of, how it was different from, a lot of your peers at this point now?
Yeah, I think I realised quite early on that I was going to have a different experience in life. So a bit of background is that, I had one parent with kind of like mental health illness, which I think is more of a trendy thing to talk about now, but not when I was going through it and learning to navigate these waters. Very hard. But you have that experience, and then you have the other parent that's really working hard, not earning massive wage, but you just see the grind, you see the hustle, and you see why they're working so hard and they're sacrificing so much. So if you grow up and you see someone hustling, it kind of is a nature nurture thing. You see it, and then it's like, right, so they're tired, but they're not giving up. And I think that's one of the key things. I used to think of it as a negative. Like, why me? This is really difficult. Why do I have to bear the burden of this stress? Look how easy it is for other kids that have two parents that really work hard and they're really stable and they've got the money rolling in. But then you realize that's not the answer to all the scenarios and the problems either. So I'm kind of grateful now, full 360 on the scenario, which is first it was like a blame game, and I think that's naivety of the child, basically attributing why things going wrong to an outside experience. And then you grow up and you internalize it and you realize, actually, you know what? You learn how to hustle, you learn how to grind, you learn how to fight. And I think that's what you kind of find interesting in my answers. Like, where does that come from? Where it comes from a not so good environment, which is kind of weird because I always have to remind myself, no diamonds, no pressure, and the vice versa. So you're not really going to get anywhere if it's too cushy. And I reckon I don't think I'd be as hungry if I didn't have to go through what I went through with the family, parental things, cultural as well, the way we then handle things, the way certain things are spoken about, man, it can be toxic. And I'm not about that. I don't like talking about those things. I don't really ingrain myself in the culture per se. I understand it, but it doesn't mean I want to continue it. I want to be the person that breaks that cycle and actually say, we can talk about anything under this roof and we can speak openly. And you can be annoyed about things, and you can disagree with me. It's okay to disagree with someone, but I don't think that was the case in many of our Asian backgrounds. It's either one's right, one's wrong. It has to be that way, and I think it's perspective, isn't it? And I think the process of actually going through adversity, like seeing your parents struggle, seeing them give up a large portion of their time to make sure it's good for the kids. Wow, when you grow up, when you deep it, when you're older, it's actually invaluable to see that.
I can imagine this, when you were kind of going through school, A levels, then to uni, it was kind of all systems go in a sense of, mindset and just getting it done. Would you say you kind of have the same killer inside of you that you had during A levels? Is that same killer still there?
Honestly, no, not in the same way, because funnily enough, people hate on academia, but it's actually one of the things that actually has targets, goals, and a timeline. Work does not have the same timeline. I'm sure you can relate to me with that one. Yes, that you knew in 6 weeks you're going to have an exam. You knew in 8 weeks there was a piece of coursework due. What do you do when it's all said and done? Weirdly, I didn't know what to do after university. I had post-uni depression. I was like, I really loved it that the timetable was so flex. And basically you just knew you had, you're around the friends that you want to be with. As soon as you start spreading out and then real life kicks in, I think I struggled with the working side more than I struggled with the studying side. But coming back to that killer mindset, I knew it would take me. I knew what I needed to do then. Now I think when you go older and there's options are like basically unlimited. You can pack up your current job. You can go traveling. You can blog. You can do something on a niche area of your experience. You can learn a new something. I struggle with that because what am I going to be killer towards? Essentially, I think the killer mindset still sticks with being able to execute things. So maybe that's the way it's still there. So if I know I have to do something, I'll probably figure out a way to do it. But it's not as intense. And I think it was kind of not. People on the outset would probably think, "Oh, what a high flyer, what a high achiever." But it wasn't the case, man. I was at war with myself day in, day out. Everyone else just saw the body, the killer mindset, and I was like, "Oh man, this is overwhelming for a lot of it." But no one sees that part. Everyone just sees you just achieving and they think that's success. And I'm like, no, I think success these days is about having a good balance between executing and having the mindset to deliver and deliver well. Not merely deliver, really go into it. I guess I get very ingrained in any research I do. And that comes from critical thinking skills learned over the course of life and university. And then you kind of adapt it, right? It's an adaptable approach then. So I can turn it on, I can turn it off. And I think that's the key of actually having balance. I'm not saying I've perfected it. No way. But I reckon the more I talk about it and the more people ask me about it, I guess I reflect on myself. And even when I'm talking now, I'm like, yeah, you could probably do more. And you could probably chill more. But it needs to be always in harmony. Otherwise, it's going to tip over. You might be looking like, you're achieving, but where's the relaxation and where do you really take stock of all the things you've been able to achieve?
Would you say A-levels was harder or your degree?
I would say A-levels.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it was just so much.
Degree? Did 5 A-levels as well?
Yeah, I think I dropped one after AS level, so I dropped
What did you do? What did you study at A-level?
At A-level, I did economics, IT, psychology, accounting, and then an EPQ is extended project qualification.
Yeah.
That was EPQ was just a 1-term, 1-year thing. And then funnily enough, I remember my teacher was quite annoyed. I actually dropped accounting, but I ended up getting 90% in that AS level.
90.
But I was like, I don't really see myself as an accountant. I heard and believed that they were pretty boring. I didn't realize that was something to achieve. I didn't want to be an accountant. I wanted to learn more about business, so that's why I studied economics at university.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I dropped that one. And I do think A-levels were harder because the timeline was shorter.
Yeah.
You only had 2 years and you only had two attempts. I know it's even harder now probably. I think you do exams after the whole year, I think.
Yeah.
But back then it used to be every 6 months. So January exams and then June exams. I don't think I've ever done anything as hard as A-levels again. And university was applied thinking. It was a lot of content, but I don't think I actually had to work as hard as I did because that's where you're building this foundation.
Yeah. And
building the foundation is way harder than rolling with that foundation. So always when you're building foundations, it's the most trickiest part. If you lay those foundations well, the rest of it can be learnt on made experience, plus the combination of all the hard work you went to.
Do you know what? With A-levels, I feel like they were next level, bro. Like, they were so hard. I've never done anything that hard. I don't think I probably ever will, to be fair. Because it was, so intense.
Yeah.
I just remember having like exam after exam after exam, like literally every day. And I remember, I think even for me, I had like a mental breakdown, bro. I was like, this is just crazy. Just mental.
The expectation is very high, and especially if you've been around success and you know what success looks like. I think it gets harder and harder as the ages go on. Like, you know, how many more people did better than me at A levels? I think there's a fair chunk of the population. And then, you know, at university, you're always being told, oh, you're competing with so many X number thousands of people. Dude, that's not really healthy for a young kid. But essentially, if you're able to back the pressure, though, you will be able to get the best out yourself. But if you're not academically inclined, I don't think you should try to force it. It's like putting a square peg in a round hole.
Yeah.
Not everyone is going to do well there, but the people that are going to do well, they will do well. And it's probably because they've shown signs of doing quite well in that area. You know, so I think that's really important to know your strengths. You know, you got to follow that thing, because not everyone's meant to just be study, exams, regurgitate. I do feel like academic studies is a bit like that. And then eventually it turns into reason and critical thinking. But for a large portion of it, you just almost like have to become this like regurgitating bookworm which knows how to do this, unless you do logical subjects like maths, physics, any of the sciences. And you got a reason why, you know, that makes you think. That's real life.
That's true. I think that element of it is so tough. I think like holding that much information, because even with GCSEs it was like, yeah, it's a lot of subjects, but the depth is nowhere near as intense as with A levels. I think with A levels it's such high pressure, and the fact, because we only had one exam at the end of the year. And when you're like 17, it's a lot, man. Like, it's a lot of pressure on your shoulders. So I think you know, it's quite normal to an extent, of especially around here, of kids doing A levels. When in reality, it's impressive, man. It's impressive to take on that pressure and then go to uni when you're 18, 19, because you're still so young.
Yes, and you know what's really funny? Some of the international students felt like they were way more clued up than us. I think it's our culture and how we brought up. Like, we've kind of mothered by like education and the teacher saying, this is what you got to do for this one, and I'll make this easier for you, or I'll do one-to-one tuition, for example. That worked. But I felt like when I met the internationals, they're probably a year or two older as well, and they were just able to get a concept on just things at university way better. So they were able to probably deep it a little bit more. They kind of knew they were going, but their cultural flavor comes through, and they can see that. I guess maybe it's that, right? Just the way we're brought up in the educational culture and the academic system in the UK. Bear in mind, we're just talking about UK education. It could be very different in Spain or international schools or things like that, or boarding school. You know, they're feeling pressure from being away from their parents. So we don't actually deep that side of it. But the right person, the person that takes on the pressure and becomes better from it, is the person that can thrive in those environments. But I don't think it's for everyone.
Do you think that, because I mean, it's an interesting point. I think I agree. It's not necessarily for everyone, but do you think everyone, to an extent, has the capacity to do well in A levels? Because I mean, even for me, for AS levels, because we had 2 lots of exams, and for us, AS levels counted. My AS levels, bro, were just awful, like terrible. And I asked myself that same question. I was like, it's just not really for me. And I was kind of going into that mindset of, you know, creativity. I'm a creative person. I'll go into that kind of, you know, I'm going to end up there somewhere. And it was kind of a non-negotiable. I kind of had to put myself in a different space. Like, I didn't go out at all that year. I was just locked in. And then my A levels were completely different. So it's like, for me, it's always an interesting point. I want to get your take on it. Do you think that people have the capacity to do well in A levels, or do you think it genuinely is one of them things you either kind of have that skill set or you don't?
I guess in general, I think humans can achieve some amazing things, if I were to answer it like that. So I reckon a human can do, able-bodied, able-minded, bear in mind, they're my assumptions, you can do whatever you really do put your mind to. It depends if you're able to part with where you think you want to end up. And if you can do that, great, good for you, right? Because then you can do things you don't necessarily like. I did not like A levels. I had to do them, the same pressure you're feeling. Yeah. But imagine, I don't feel like I had a safety net or another way out. So therefore, that comes back to the mindset.
Yeah.
You know, using those options out there to and the pressure to kind of say, all right, let's just do it. I also didn't go out, and I also I probably had like stress spots, and I wasn't sleeping very well, hooked up on caffeine. So I think it all comes around. It doesn't matter if it's A levels, or it doesn't matter if it's a job, it doesn't matter if it's the creativity space. Everything demands pressure, and eventually, once you've got, I think it's really important to get a certain baseline in education, because then you can keep coming to that. You can use that in various different ways. Then venture off. Then specialize.
But have that foundation to fall back on.
Yes, always have a foundation. And I think in this world, we live in the Western world. We need to you show something for rote and learn, certificates and those kind of things. Then do what you want. Once you've done it all. But a lot of the most successful people probably dropped out of school and they're way better off. So they knew their higher calling. And that's something I would love to get their experience on. Why were they so opposed to it, or why did they choose that way so strongly?
Desire of the beat.
Bro, if I painted a hypothetical picture for you, let's say there's a kid who's struggling, they're not sure what they want to do, they've got all this energy, they haven't really been given all the cards or the best start in life or opportunity, but they've got this hunger and they don't know what to do with it. What advice would you give that kid?
How old are we talking?
Let's say 16, 17, just before uni age.
Yeah, I think that pretty much goes back full circle as to my experience as well. I felt like I was that kid, if I'm really honest. Not the best start, but a great support from family, but never the pressure. Never said you need to do this, never to do that. What do you do? I felt like I also had a lot of energy and I didn't know exactly how to spend it. I'd probably get myself in trouble. I was always known to be the class joker, you mess around, but that's just to bring like a little bit of lightness to an otherwise boring studying routine, right? The advice I'd give to that kid is to really just think for a moment, what are they good at and what could they see themselves, even though they're not good at it, at a push, where could they achieve? So let's give an example, 2 scenarios. One person is going to go to university and therefore knows college or A-levels are the way to go. And second hypothetical line of thought is someone that probably wants to start an apprenticeship and start working straight away, something trades, or start their own business or something like that. So I think on the academic side, it's about really understanding, like, what do you have an interest in? I wish someone asked me that more, because I don't think I would have done economics. I would have probably done psychology. And that's just a really easy one for me. I think my psychology teachers were annoyed that I didn't do psychology. I find it really interesting. I love human psychology. So there's an example. That's something I like. Unfortunately, I'm not saying I followed what I knew. I went and realised corporate world is going to probably give me the more opportunities, and I don't really want to work in the NHS, and that didn't feel like it was going to give the opportunities I now have. And for the other person that doesn't like studying, it's almost like, well, okay, apprenticeships are really good these days. One of my best friends actually started an apprenticeship at KPMG and now is in a similar area of work to me. And another one still, I think GCSEs, yes, fluked the A-levels, but now is an investment banker. So that is just to show how much opportunity is out there for someone that didn't feel like they were academic, because academics is really wide area and you actually think you need to be academic to achieve certain things, but he was just really good at odds, and betting. So that's his way. The investment bank example didn't really do well in GCSE and A levels, but still made something off it within that area and field. You know, if you write, it can come back to education. If you have to do maths for certain things, it comes back to education. So it always is there in some way, shape or form. But the advice for someone that has abundance of energy is just to settle it down a little bit. Just take a step back. If you've got the energy, great, because that's a lot more than most people have, which is a lack of motivation. So energy can turn into motivation with the right prompts and the right guidance. So maybe it's about talking to someone elder, someone that's actually done work in that particular area, and go out and just ask the world questions. YouTube is a wealth of information as well. And, you know, you can see the day in the life off. And I love those videos, because if I were to go back and there was this much information out there when we were growing up, it would help, because I would then see a corporate person doesn't really get a chance to get steps in, because you're just tied at the desk, let's say, anyways. But a person that runs their own business probably stressed in another way, but does get out. So it's almost like you've got to weigh up your odds, right? And that person, that kid, needs to really be able to be conduct a critical evaluation of themselves. You know, not just gassing it because there's certain areas popping off and I want to be a trader because I love the cars. Not many people will succeed in trading. So what are you going to do then? So what happens when it gets tough? Where are you going to really be able to grind it out still?
And you kind of, within that answer, you touched on the flip side of it. You know, having abundance of energy is opposite of lacking motivation. So my question to you is, what would you then say to the kid who is going through the complete opposite and they're really struggling with motivating themselves? And they might be a little bit older, let's say 21, 22, you know, all the way up to 30.
I think I sympathise, because it's not easy in this world, especially with how much information is out there and how many opportunities you can potentially have. Advice for someone that hasn't got the motivation is just take a step back and just assess certain scenarios for themselves. I think it always comes back to knowing yourself, or trying to know yourself. I know it's hard when you're young.
Yeah.
But it's essentially just being able to take that step back and just evaluate. So why is it that I don't have motivation? That would be a killer question to ask. Journaling. Is it to do with a upbringing scenario? Is it to do with how I see the world? Is it because I feel like I'm going to fail? There usually are psychological triggers in motivation and unmotivation. A demotivated person just doesn't realize they might feel the pressure build up too much, and then they become stuck, fight or flight. So you just freeze. And I guess that's the third option, fight, flight or freeze. So you fight in it, so you tackle it head on. Flight it, I want to run away from that, I'm going to do something totally different. Or you freeze, so it freezes you up. I think there's some goats actually which are really funny. When they get stressed out, they just fall to the side. That's freezing. That's adrenaline rush, but not being able to do anything about it.
Yeah.
I think everyone does have motivation, but it also could be the product of the fact that they're not deep to something enough. They haven't had the adequate guidance when growing up, or a mix of all these things plus the pressure of, oh, if I did perform, I think I'm going to fail. Well, failure is for everyone to learn from, and it should never be seen as a bad thing. So what would you do? The flip side question I would ask is, what would you do if failure wasn't an option? If you didn't fail, what would you do? And maybe that for that person, they might be able to think, actually, yeah, I want to do something nice. And it might be totally not the answer you expected, but that's the mindset you probably have to go through. Like, if I don't fail, what would I do? If that's the thing causing you to become demotivated, or if the pressure is, I've got to achieve, well, what wouldn't you mind achieving at if you knew that you had to go through some crap days and had to go more good days than bad? But, you know, generally speaking, though, there's that element. And then the other thing is, there could actually be a personal issue whereby stress, depression, anxiety kicks in. Really serious topics. Definitely need someone to talk to strategize the mindset, go through the journaling process, and take the qualitative understanding from that.
And it is so interesting because there's so many reasons why, you know, you might be lacking motivation. I think that through asking you these questions, you're kind of helping me land at the next point. And there's a third hypothetical I want to propose to you. And that's if someone is kind of scared of reaching their potential. And you kind of touched on it earlier as well in terms of imposter syndrome. What would you say to that person who's kind of in spaces where it's like, wow, how am I here? I don't really deserve to be here. I mean, what advice would you give that person? Because that must be a really, really scary feeling, right?
Yeah, and I think the best advice, everyone's scared. No one has a bloody Scooby what they're doing in life. If you really ask them, they just picked some options and they run with it. It's either been good for them financially, but less what we hear is it's been good for them spiritually. So actually, anyone that's got one side of success and not the other, are they really successful? If it leads you to have a body that doesn't respond in the way you want it to, and fear of failure is more than, and then anxious when doing stuff, is it really good? Or is it make-believe? You know, so...
Because that one is tough.
Yeah.
I'm not going to lie, that question's really tough. Because, I mean, have you seen, like, Good Will Hunting?
Yeah.
It's
Great
hard.
film.
You can't help someone see what you can see
In them?
in them.
Yeah, and I think that's the whole point. I really would advocate in this particular set of scenario questions, the best way is to reflect. And anyone struggling with the fear of failure also realize the person next to you is also fearing failure, which is why stress occurs, anxiousness occurs. So you got to have appropriate mechanisms in place. And maybe for some people it's working out, maybe they've got a creative outlet, or maybe they learn to read, they do stuff, or they just want to explore a city, or dangerously drinking to numb the feeling of the failures of the week, or the potential failures that they could have had in the week. That's what we see a lot of, right? The week's finished and then you just kind of go douse your brain with brain shrinking chemicals, and then you got this. Not a bad thing. I definitely do love a drink, but I'm saying that some people can misuse it as well. It's a really personal question. How do you tell someone with the fear of failure that it's all going to be all right? Well, look around. Most people were scared of something. We just have to learn to develop a personal mechanism that works for us.
It's true. I mean, we've kind of spoken a lot about very serious topics, and of course it's so important to touch on, because there will be so many people watching this that can relate in one way or another, whether it's through lacking motivation, or having an abundance of energy, or maybe even being scared of their potential. But to flip that on its head, how important is it to reach the point you have to kind of switch off and just bake off and be a little bit silly and spend time with friends? How important is that side of it all as well?
More and more it's becoming increasingly more important, because pressures don't go away. They actually get more and more so prevalent as you get older. So let's say your only pressure when studying, it could be family pressure and studying pressure. When you grow up, then it's the pressure of getting on the property ladder, getting married, potentially looking at family scenarios. These all are increasingly, as the society progresses, they're getting harder and harder. The statistics, like the percentage of Londoners that really do own their home versus don't. Rentals have gone up through the roof. What does that show? It shows that these metrics that people would define as success before are getting harder and harder to reach. So I guess it's really important to work hard, work smart, but bloody well enjoy yourself. This is the one life we have. A lot of people do say that, and I don't know if I agree with you only have one life, but this is essentially one life I'll have in this body. Maybe that's the better way to say it. And being stupid and being funny is also the flip side of the dedication and the hard work. If you don't have an outlet, like me, I'll be really silly and jovial most of the time, but people wouldn't see you as being a serious character then, which is kind of funny, because you actually realize the person that's probably deep to life the most is probably the lightest talker in the room, because they've kind of come to at peace with the difficulties, the pressures and all that stuff. And I love that. And I think that's the route I would like to take going forward. Yes, okay, life has kind of thrown a few curveballs, but there's always time for a laugh. What is it all for then?
Yeah.
What is it all for if all we're doing is trying to achieve things and put a tick in the box? I need to be encouraged. I'm actually, this is advice for myself from me through your question, which is take it easy.
Yeah.
Keep working hard, work smart, but learn to take it easy, know how to take it easy. And I think, as well as me, we'll have jokes. We'll learn a new sport, golf. We'll go for a run. We'll do something silly. Might watch stupid YouTube videos. I watch a lot of videos on animals behaving badly or something. TikTok's full of jokes as well. Just use the appropriate measures to just cool off a little bit. And it's way more important because I think laughter is just the best remedy.
100%. I think, with the new wave of kids coming through now, I think there's so much pressure to succeed at, crazy young ages. It's like 20, 21, 22. It's like, this guy's doing this. Social media, how can I get to that point ASAP? And it's like there's so much pressure and guilt that comes with that by not being on it 100% of the day. And I think, to hear that from someone like yourself, it's important for people to hear, because it isn't serious 100% of the day. It can't be.
No. And I think once you've laid your good foundations, what I will say, laying foundations, if there was one thing I'd like for everyone to take on from my experience only, and I don't mean this is by no means gospel, when you're laying foundations, time is difficult, man. It could be in a creative field, it could be an academic field, it could be in a sports related field. Those things, though, will carry you on through life. So just persevere through it. And you probably, when you start, it's vulnerability for me. I'm showing vulnerability by talking about these things. But I'm also saying anyone that just sees me as like the corporate identity would not realize there's a human element to it. So it's really important to part the two, because without that, we're just we're on an endless loop, man. Achieve this, achieve that. When have you slowed down, like they say, to smell the roses? I don't mean that. Act like it's a metaphor, right? So slow down, just appreciate what you've done. I have to remind myself of that. I'm not good at that, because I'm like, I could do this and this. And my mum had a chat with me the other day. She goes like, you're always wanting to do the next thing, but look, just relax have satisfaction. And that was just a conversation my mum actually said after maybe a lot of her sitting back and not saying anything. The other day she said, Sonny, you do not look like you have satisfaction in life. So I'm not saying I know things. I'm just saying I'm also being given advice, luckily, from people that actually know me better than probably I know myself in many ways. But yeah, just slow down, man. But build the foundation and then learn to balance things.
And how important would you say that is? I mean, obviously, taking advice from your parents and just listening to people, because it's like a pyramid, isn't it? It's like their lived experience, others lived experience, like all of that kind of knowledge, kind of shapes you and who you are. How important is it to, just kind of be a sponge as well?
Probably more important than what I'm doing here, which is giving the answers in this sense. I would love to be able to pick a brain and just to say, what wakes you up? What gets you going? What do you do when things go tits up?
I'm lucky to be in that position, to be fair, because I get to ask the guests, all the time. So yeah, it's a privilege.
You know as well as me, you're listening on and you'll probably be like, yeah, I really resonate with that. That's exactly how it's why it's so important. It's actually more important to be listening than it is to be talking. What did they say? God gave you two ears and one mouth, right?
Yeah.
The proportions are different. And I think a lot of people will probably say, yeah, I can talk. Yes, because I want to actually share. It doesn't mean I'm not willing to learn, but I would like to share. I feel like I've got something interesting to share with the world. I want to share it. But I'm also learning. I'm always learning. Maybe not from people, but I'm always researching something. I'm listening to something, podcasts in other forms. And it needs to be an equal portion. You should be able to do and say and suggest, but also always be a sponge, always be teachable. And I want to make sure I'm doing more of that, even when I get older. A lot of people, when they get older, they get a bit stuck in their ways, don't they? I don't want to be too much like that. I want to be able to still say I can learn from a 4-year-old. Kids have the best advice, and so do the adults. And they've lived more than you, and they've left you. But in the middle of it, you might be deep in it a bit too much. So come up for a bit of fresh air, look around. Who's actually doing something that's different? Learn from them.
That's the interesting part as well. It doesn't matter like if someone's doing something completely different to you, but you can always, feel inspiration and learn from what they're doing. And I think that's why it was so important to get yourself on the podcast, because I think, there's definitely kind of a level of ignorance with creatives and creativity, and talking about doing a 9 to 5 or kind of looking down on that. But I think for me, it's always, seeing the motivations and the hunger and the mindset of everyone, because it is so interesting, and getting that information out there is imperative, because no two people are the same.
Yeah, and not everyone is trying to kill it in life. This is something I'm learning as well.
Mm.
Some people just want stability. You can't mock that. I can't always expect someone to be like me. It's really important. Creative people, I don't know what wakes them up in the morning to say this is what they want to share with the world and where that comes from. However, I can understand how to display it in my way, but I wouldn't know what that feels like in another form and a different function of it. But yeah, not everyone wants to do what we're doing. We're just a very small percentage of people, and but I think you got to drop the act of secluding people away from, or barring them off. It's about including them. Making a better, richer environment for those creatives to play in, so you can succeed. But I think there's enough success to go around for everyone.
Of course.
That was the most key thing I learned. There's enough success to go out for everyone. Around for everyone, because you can do good, I can do good, Felix can do good, we can all do good, but there's enough space in the world for us all. Always remember that. I think that I always remember that now. It's not a competition. It is to an extent, but then, right, you don't need to be enemies. Back it up. If someone's locking down a 9 to 5, be proud of them. If someone's doing sick in the creative space, be proud of them. There's enough there. You're not even in a related field, so just appreciate it. Appreciate hustle. Is what I'd say, in any shape or form.
It's like the real battle is like you versus you, innit?
Yeah.
Me versus me.
Yeah.
That's always what's going to come down to, because it is an internal battle. Once you can kind of master that and understand where you're at mentally, I feel like the rest of it's going to kind of take care of itself.
But I totally get it as well. On the flip side, it is me versus me every day. But when we are exposed to so much information and data and people progressing faster, slower, more rapidly, growing fan bases here and there, it's normal to feel, shit, I'm not doing enough. I could do so much more. But wait, are you making yourself unhappy during the process? Probably not. Probably need to have a word with. To what level is reasonable for you to take on that pressure as positive fuel? And where would it be a hindrance?
I've got one final question for you. And what would your message be to the youth after everything that we've kind of spoken about on this podcast? How would you kind of summarize it in a message to the next kind of generation of creatives, or just people who are looking to achieve something?
That is probably the most difficult question you've asked me today.
It's tough. It's tough. I'll be honest. It's a very tough question.
Tough one. But let's see if we can summarize something here in a really good way, which is know yourself, give yourself space to grow, don't hide away from pressure, keep working, work hard, work smart, hustle, just come up for some fresh air, relax, take it all in. If you're doing good, carry on. If you're not doing so good, reevaluate. There's always time to do the thing you want to do. As long as you're breathing, just keep going.
Bro, thank you. I think that was a beautiful way to end it. I mean, that's, stunning. Really appreciate you coming on, bro. Super insightful. I hope, which I'm sure the viewers would have, taken a lot from that. Really appreciate your time, bro. You're welcome to come back on, whenever. It's a pleasure to sit down with you.
Really good. Thank you, Taz and team. It's actually been so much easier to talk about this stuff than I even initially thought. So appreciate the opportunity, and I really hope someone finds some good nuggets here, because I think you've asked me some terribly hard questions and I hope someone can benefit from them. Thanks, man.
No, I'm sure they will, bro. I'm sure they will. But, like I say, appreciate you. Welcome back whenever, bro. Guys, we hope you enjoyed the episode. We'll catch you in the next one. Take care.